in Australia. Okay, so it's a kind of weird phobia, right? So if you sort of think about, we all know this like scientific fact that you can rest as much scientific evidence as you want, that people learn to fear things. If we look at the neuroscience of fear development, when I have an aversive stimulus or a painful stimulus, I will learn to fear it. So we all fear hot pans, right? We don't touch hot pans because we know that it burns us. If I take a hot pan, and we don't think about it as I fear hot pans because you are dealing with it in a way that doesn't evoke fear. But if I walk in with a hot pan and I push it towards you, your response will 100% be fear, right? So we actually have overwhelming evidence that phobias come from traumas, right? We have some evidence that some phobias come from some kind of genetic impression, which, by the way, what is that? Oh, it's a memory from a past life. Interesting, right? Because that's what a genetic impression of an inborn phobia is. Do y'all get that? It's like we have genetic memory, which is literally memories from a past life. So then if we sort of say, okay, if phobias come from psychological traumas, we know that we can track those back. So we can track back, let's say 50% of phobias to psychological traumas. Completely scientifically plausible. Where do the other 50% come from? So one of two things. One is they come from somewhere else, or two is that they come from the scientific principle is the same. We just don't know where the psychological trauma is. Y'all get that? So if you sort of assume the theory of karma, then everything makes sense. This is simply a psychological trauma from a past life, which, by the way, so one of two things. One is they come from somewhere else, or two is that they come from the scientific principle is the same. We just don't know where the psychological trauma is. Y'all get that? So if you sort of assume the theory of karma, then everything makes sense. This is simply a psychological trauma from a past life, which, by the way, through things like epigenetic memory, we also have low quality evidence for. So this is where a lot of people who are like into the theory of karma will say like, oh, like we have this data from Holocaust survivors and epigenetic changes and inherited anxiety and inherited features of PTSD and stuff like that. And there's some evidence there, but I think it's far from conclusive. So we have some evidence that memories, like literally now we know that memories can be transmitted between generations. So now then the next question becomes, okay, so like, was it you, right? Or was it a different human being? And that gets a little bit more complicated, but does that answer your question?
It does, yeah.
Let's talk a little about certain mental ailments.
Sure.
Such as like ADHD and or like autism.
Okay.
And the reason why...
Jack.
So we kind of brought this
See
up
how
before the
that is.
podcast because obviously we take the online quizzes. Okay, everyone does, and I see this disgruntled look in your face.
Yeah.
What is your take of these online quizzes? Do you think that if it says, hey, you should talk to a professional, that you should actually proceed and talk to a professional?
Part of me thinks it's a little skewed. I think it was my idea to take the quiz. I'm not sure. It was either me or Alex, right? Doesn't matter. But basically, as a bit of a background, we kind of talked amongst ourselves. We're like, maybe we're autistic. We do it. I don't mean this in like a joking way, but like I think all of us have unique traits that kind of point in that direction. And so we each took a quiz, the four of us, me, Jack, Macy, and Alex. I think on that quiz, if you scored a 25 or higher, you're lean more in that direction. 24 and below, not so much. Between me, Jack, and Alex, I think I scored a 24. Alex was like a 23, 24, and Jack was a 25. So what are the chances that all three of us lean in that direction?
That's a question that I don't have a simple answer to, but I have a complete answer.
Cool.
It's just not simple. So let's start with your first question of what do I think about these quizzes? Well, that depends on the quiz. So some websites, for example, will use validated instruments, right? So these are scientific instruments that are constructed, tested. We do things like factor analysis and stuff like that. We develop these instruments ourselves at HP because the instruments out there don't capture what we want to capture. But there's a rigorous scientific process to determine whether the questions I ask you literally correlates with what I'm trying to measure. So one of the things that we see a lot is like, especially like in the private sector, you have a lot of people who will develop their own tests, like personality tests or whatever. And like all of these tests, like the reason they're very successful is because they have a lot of face validity. So they're very similar to astrology in the sense that like, why do people believe in astrology? It's a more complex answer, but one reason is because when you take the test, it feels right to you, therefore you believe it. So the successfulness, especially of a lot of these privately determined tests or like whatever, like websites that people use. The reason that people visit those websites, what they're selecting for is not scientific validity of test. I don't know if y'all have ever done like a scientifically valid test, but it's a fucking pain in the ass. It's like 300 questions, takes 90 minutes, and they ask you the same damn questions over and over and over again. That's what it takes to get to scientific validity. Now, there are some versions of that that are a little bit better, like we have things like the PHQ-9 or the PHQ-2, which are screening tools for depression. So we've got some decent stuff that's short form. But generally speaking, stuff is like takes hours to really, if you really want to get a faithful representation of what is going on with someone, our science isn't really that good. So should we trust these tests or not? It really depends on the test, but I think a lot of people are building tests that are very accessible and people like it when they fill it out, which is really what they're designing the test for. That's what they're shooting for, because scientifically valid tests are really boring to take. So I'm skeptical of many of those things. Second thing, but who knows? I mean, maybe someone is doing all the factor analysis and constructing
Yeah, this
stuff.
was like a 30 question quiz that maybe took
Now,
10 minutes.
are all y'all autistic? Okay, so statistically, let's understand a couple things about autism. Autism's on the rise, okay? Now, we don't really know if it's on the rise because we're detecting it more, or it's actually like increasing in the percentage of the population. So are we catching cases? Are we getting better at catching cases, which is certainly true, or is it actually like increasing in the whole? I think both are correct. So if you look at one of the things that correlates with like autism spectrum diagnosis, so like usage of antidepressant and anti-anxiety medications during pregnancy correlates with it. Ultimately a very small effect, but it does have an effect. Maternal and paternal age also correlate with autism. So we're all having kids later, so I think that's like, there's some data that suggests that that's possible. But I think the reason that all y'all are testing high, so maybe it's a bad test, who knows, right? And if we sort of think about, if I'm designing a test that I want to engage people, I'm not going to give them a yes, and I'm not going to give them a no. What I'm going to give them is a maybe that makes them wonder and curious. And then what I'm going to do, I don't know if there was a CTA or anything like this, sign up for this for a more advanced test.
There was.
Okay. The unsophisticated
And
website.
his fiance scored very low.
Not very low, but definitely on the no.
So
Yeah.
then the other thing to understand, which I think is a key point of the complexity, is I think as a society, we are developing features that the Venn diagram between the average person and someone with autism is like overlapping more. And that's primarily through things like technology use. So if we look at some of the features of autism, it's things like difficulty with social connections, difficulty with empathy, sometimes a lot of rigid thinking, a tendency for things like perseveration. And this is absolutely happening to everyone because of tech. So if we look at like what's happening, so this is something that we help a lot of people with in our community, is there's a social skills atrophy that's going on across society. And unfortunately, text messaging isn't just as good as in-person interaction. So if you look at the brain, so our brain interprets a lot of information from people, right? So I'm paying attention to your facial expressions, I'm paying attention to your body posture, I'm paying attention to all kinds of stuff. And this information is reassuring. Y'all get that? So a lot of the reassuring information we get socially is like body language, tone, eye contact, stuff like that. Now, when I start texting people or using Discord or whatever, the brain is very efficient. So anything it doesn't use, it loses. This is why we forget languages. So if I start communicating with people in the absence of body language, tone, and facial expression, the gears in my brain that interpret that stuff become rusty. And so then what happens is when I go into a social situation, I'm no longer reassured by all of this information because that circuit in my brain is rusty, which then means I become anxious. And as I become anxious, we start engaging our problem-solving circuitry. Now I'm thinking, is this person like me? Not like me? Oh, when should I enter this conversation? These people are talking back and forth and I have something to say, but should I butt in? Will they feel it's bad? Oh no, now that the moment has passed, now there's a pause in the conversation, but should I go back and mention this thing that they were talking about 60 seconds ago, or is that off? So then what happens is when our brain does not have kind of empathic information, it uses cognition to make up the gap, which is what it always does, right? So when my left leg is damaged, if I pulled a muscle, my brain will naturally favor my right leg to pick up the slack. So what's happening in our society as a whole is we are becoming less empathic and less emotionally aware. Also because technology suppresses activity in the limbic system in the amygdala, which means that like literally when I like, I'm feeling bad about myself and I look at cat videos, and then the feelings of badness go away. So we're getting more emotional, more emotional dysregulation. We're becoming less empathic. We're interpreting social signals less well because we're using online communication. And this looks closer and closer to autism, right? Because these are the deficits in the brain that people have with autism. They have difficulty with social connections, difficulty with empathy. They can just see things from their own view. So we also have online radicalization, echo chambers, which is leading to rigidity and perseveration, which we see take your political conflict and whatever you want. We'll see it there. So I think these things are overlapping and makes it look like people are autistic. But I don't think we're actually getting autistic. I think we're affecting certain faculties that are consistent with autism. But that doesn't, you'll see that's
Yeah, that makes
things,
sense.
right? It's not autism.
I think
really interesting
it's
answer.
like ADHD. ADHD kind of, if you have ADHD, it mirrors a lot of the traits that an autistic person would have. Right? Would you say that's an accurate statement or no?
It's fair.
Right. And
I
think,
wouldn't say that, but
and
it's fair.
I think that ADHD is, I'm guessing, on the rise, or maybe it's the same thing with autism, where where we have access to instant gratification, all of these things that basically make it so our expectation or our standards for a certain level of entertainment value are so high now that we need to have this instant gratification in every single facet of life. And I think that could mirror ADHD. Whether or not it actually like transforms someone into someone with ADHD, I'm not really sure. I don't know if that's like a possible thing.
Why does it seem like ADHD is getting so common? It seems like half the kids growing up is like some form of ADHD.
Yeah, so I think it's a great question. I think it's the same thing as autism and exactly what Jack said. If the mind doesn't use something, it loses it. So if we look at attention span. So if you look at like people will say, okay, like screen time is good or screen time is bad. Sometimes parents, will ask me, we do a lot of work with parents. And they'll ask me like what amount of screen time is good or bad. And the issue is screen time isn't all the same. So there's a great guy named Carl Marcy, was a colleague of mine at Harvard Medical School. He started an empathy lab thing where he ended up his company got acquired by Nielsen. So what he would do is he would hook people up to EEGs and like cardiovascular stuff and stuff like that. He would measure them in a bazillion different ways and then have them watch ads. And then he would tell companies this ad is the best based on the EEG activity. Just a brilliant idea. So I was talking to Carl about this, and Carl was kind of pointing out to me that like, when you watch Sesame Street and you're a 5-year-old, there is a certain length of like what you're engaging with. The story is like maybe 7 minutes long. So now what's going on is that kids, the moment they get bored with something, so when you're bored with Sesame Street, you have to sit through it. And over time, even if you watch Sesame Street every single day, your attention span will actually increase because you're sort of forced to pay attention. Whereas now what's going on is people have such simple access to change the thing that they're viewing. So if you look at it, if you give a 4-year-old an iPad, over time what'll happen is they won't watch long form stuff. They'll just switch off of it more and more and more and more and more, which is why if you look at a lot of these things that are very, very like common for that kids will watch, it's like compilations of super short form stuff. So there'll be an hour of like a kid that's like looking at 60-second clips and is just like completely mentally checked out. So we absolutely have a society that is shortening our attention span. We also have a society, so another key feature of ADHD is emotional dysregulation. There's even some papers now that are suggesting that, there's ADD, which is attention deficit disorder, and there's ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And they're even proposing a third subtype, which is like ADD with like emotional dysregulation is the primary feature. And so our technology is regulating our emotions for us. Right? Because when I feel bad, what am I going to do? I'm going to look at cat videos. There's even a really interesting study that came out recently that suggests that 50% of women who use Tinder are using it to meet psychological needs completely outside of dating. And so people are super confused, and it's probably not just women. I don't know why the study.
I saw that video you did on that.
Yeah,
it was
so
really interesting.
It's kind of interesting,
Yeah.
right? So because people will wonder, like, why did this person match with me in the first place? Like, you message them, and they're like, "Screw you, you suck, you're ugly," and they unmatch. And like, why did you do that? It's because they're fulfilling some other kind of psychological need. Anyway, so if we look at what's going on with society, there's a lot of stuff that is making our brains more similar to someone with ADHD. Now, that may be independent of probably my guess is a rise in ADHD as well, because that also correlates with, I think, like parental age. So as we're having kids later, like we're seeing more of this stuff.
That's really interesting. What are the implications of giving a kid an iPad? I go out to eat every now and then. I need to see this kid just on the. It's like nothing. The world could be exploding behind them. And they're just fixated on this screen. That can't be good.
What do y'all think?
I think it's terrible. I think it's rotting away their mind. And I think for kids to have access to TikTok, I think it's a bad thing. Even for myself, I constantly delete the app, prevent myself from going on TikTok. Because if I watch one, it's just like 5 minutes goes by so fast. I'm like, what did I just do?
So that's so interesting. You say constantly, which means you're also constantly reinstalling
Well,
it.
because I post on TikTok. So it's a bit of a double edge because I like to see the analytics of how my videos do. But when I'm on there, I also like to see what's going on from a creator perspective, but I very quickly fall into the consumer.
So this has always been true with parenting, where parents will do things.
Come, pretty little rocks.
Put out new mycelium! New roots! The blight is trying to spread!
believe in traveling light.
Gotta grab 'em before someone else does. Eh?
I can't do this just yet. I believe in traveling light.
You find everything all right, bro?
Nah, for sure.
Got you, man. Let me ring you up real quick.
Y'all don't got no snack or something back there? Like,
Rock with these?
that's why you my man. That's why you my
Oh, yeah.
man.
That's
I mean, all right.
Total comes out to $4,730.60.
Calm.
I get these.
Yeah, pull up, get.
I do got a little baby number. What's a little baby? Yeah. Rock life number.
Hey, Joanne.
Hey, bro, what are you doing, bro? So the mafia gonna tell me y'all ordering food.
My bad.
Oh, his leg, bro.
Ah,
Oh, damn, bro. Oh, damn.
I'm dead for real, my leg.
Oh. What happened? What happened?
When he busted the door.
Bro, you hurt him, bro?
I hurt you.
Bro, he a kid, bro. Why you doing
I
that,
ain't
bro?
doing nothing, bro.
Nah, bro, that's messed up, bro. Come on, he's a kid, gang. Damn, bro. That's messed up, bro. I ain't even do.
What the fuck did I just watch?
Hello.
Hail God.
Tip. If you socket the void stones and roll them with the sextants, you can exclude mods. For example, if you get a shrine, you just roll a different one and you can't get a second shrine.
I know. Thank you. I don't care. I don't want to roll specifically anything. I just roll anything to put them on my map. And if it's very valuable, I sell it. I just want to have any fucking sextants on. I don't care which it is. But you're talking about blocking, yeah. Yeah, but thanks. Normally it's like barrels and shit because it's so common. Oh my god. Alright, we're already at 3k, not bad. Okay. Damn. This might be juicy.
I can't do this just yet.
Double tier 1. Not bad. With vulnerability, I don't want to be crit on top of it. Thank you very much.
I am always scared to buy stuff in the woods since they're losing the wisps you need for the map.
True, but this one is like almost 100 chaos. That's fine. Alright, I'll take my time and loot all the wisps. Oh yeah. All of that was bad. Oh. Okay. 5.5K. 5.5, let's see. Where are all the mobs? Hello?
I can't do this just yet.
I wonder if I can do the blight. Huh? I don't know what he wanted, so like, if you party with someone to buy an item, don't leave. I don't know what he wanted to buy. I don't see it from the add-on. Then you're not getting the item. Okay, stun and freeze. My god. What the fuck? Dude, they're gonna all go in, right? Yeah, no way I'm holding this, right? Yeah. I guess that's fine. Oh, I think there is a limit on how many minions can be frozen by one freeze tower. I need the Giga Dam if I want to stop that. Oh, nice. If I keep going, I'm gonna be 95. Homie wants to buy polished reliquary. My god. Mobs get tanky with wisps, man. Whoa. Sick. Even selling the tincture. Do I take a nap? I feel like I want to take a nap. I like naps. Another 50 in the bag. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Really want to play RF. Ugh.
I can't do this just yet.
Oh, fuck. Yeah, I'm getting tired. Okay, last portal. Let's focus and then I'll take a nap. Going off on stream. See you hopefully in half an hour to an hour.